Good day, dear viewers. I trust you're well. Today I shall regale you with my reflections on the cinematic year that was 2024. I've two favourites, tied for entirely different reasons, mind you, and one colossal disappointment that, alas, left me feeling rather like a child presented with a Christmas pudding, only to find it's entirely raisins. Let us begin, then, with the crème de la crème of this year's offerings. First, we have the intriguingly titled Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person. Quite the mouthful, isn't it? But behind that verbose title lies an absolute gem. I unearthed this on Mubi, an art house streaming service one can access via Amazon Prime. Now, I'll admit I'm not typically one to revel in art house cinema. I prefer a robust story over esoteric concepts or gratuitously peculiar imagery. That said, I'm not adverse to the peculiar, provided it earns its place within the narrative. And my word, this film earns it splendidly. If I were a goth or, heaven help me, a Wednesday Addams type, this might very well be my 500 Days of Summer, although, in truth, I've never seen that film, so let's press on. Spoiler-free, here's why I found it delightful. The juxtaposition of its light-hearted tone against some rather heavy subject matter is masterful. The leads share an awkward yet endearing chemistry that feels both genuine and utterly charming. It's a simple, sweet vampire tale with a refreshingly indie flavour. This French-Canadian piece of work is subtitled, not dubbed, so do sharpen your reading spectacles. I awarded it a solid 9 out of 10, judged not against the grand tapestry of cinema, but rather on its own terms. It reminded me of something the venerable Roger Ebert once said. He gave a thumbs up to a Martin Lawrence film, justifying it thusly. If you're watching a Martin Lawrence film, this is a good one of those. The same applies here. If teenage angst and vampires are your cup of tea, you'll find this an absolute delight. Next, we have Strange Darling. And what a curious little beast this film is. At first glance, it presents itself as something of an art house enigma, with its narrative told out of order. This might dissuade the impatient viewer, but I urge you to stick with it. There's a method to the madness, and the payoff is as satisfying as a well-brewed pot of Earl Grey. This film has the rugged, gritty charm of a grindhouse feature, raw, visceral, and not the least bit afraid to get its hands dirty. The violence, while bold and possibly gratuitous, is woven into the story with purpose and precision. And the characters? Or the character, rather? Splendid work there. I'll avoid spoilers, but there's a particular character examination in this film that I've never seen on screen before that utterly surprised me. Being lazy, if you enjoy Tarantino films, with their assertiveness and nods to past eras of cinema, then you'll enjoy this offering. What I truly admired was the sense of intent. You can feel it in every frame. This is a film that knows exactly what it wants to be and executes that vision with aplomb. In today's age of cinematic committees and too many cooks in the kitchen, this kind of singularity of purpose is a rare treasure indeed. Violent, stylish, messy, and gloriously fun, Strange Darling earns its place alongside Humanist Vampire at the top of my list. And now we come to my biggest disappointment of 2024, Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. I confess this one stings a bit, for I had such high hopes. You see, I adore The Witch. It's one of my favourite films of the past 2 decades, a masterclass in slow-burn tension and character work. But Nosferatu? Well, let me explain. Visually, it's breathtaking. Eggers paints with light and shadow like a Renaissance master. But a film cannot subsist on beauty alone. Watching it, I felt as though I were back in my great-grandmother's sitting room as a child. She had a curio cabinet filled with porcelain figurines, delicate Victorian women in bonnets and frilly frocks. The room was dark, the blinds drawn just so, with light filtering in to create an eerie glow. It was a room meant for living but felt profoundly dead. And that's precisely how this film felt, pretty but lifeless. As I was leaving the cinema, I couldn't help but reflect on the film The Green Mile. Remember the prisoner with the circus mouse? What made us care about him? It wasn't just the mouse, though it was charming in its own right. It was the way the film built compassion around him. The guards lied to him about that mouse performing in a circus simply because it brought him joy. When Percy kills it, you hate Percy for it, and John Coffey brings it back to life. We're invested, you love him for it. And when Tom Hanks, now an old man, still cherishes that mouse, we feel the weight of it. We feel. Eggers' Nosferatu, by contrast, if it were to have such a character and mouse in it, seems as if it would give us the most beautifully rendered version of that circus mouse you could imagine. Perhaps it's lit in haunting chiaroscuro. Perhaps it moves with eerie grace across a cold concrete floor, green flakes of paint chipped away along its surface. But that's all it would be. A pretty image, devoid of life or connection. There is a prisoner in Nosferatu who bites the head off a pigeon, and it's both grotesque and beautiful, and yet I felt nothing. The character simply wasn't established. I could only imagine if that scene were earned, how it'd stick with me for another 25 years. That a man could be driven to do such a thing, and me caring about it, would have scarred me in the best way. Instead, it was yet another piece of this film that felt like a fun house prop rather than a story. The characters lack depth, and the film's attempts at tension, through jump scares no less, feel like a desperate attempt to compensate. With The Witch, the tension came naturally, rooted in the characters and their world. I was on the edge of my seat, truly wondering if that damn goat might actually talk. Here, there's nothing to hold on to. It's all beautiful, but it's empty. And so, with great regret, I must declare Nosferatu my greatest disappointment of the year. A feast for the eyes, perhaps, but for the soul, not so much. A vampire film with no bite and nothing to sink your teeth into. And there you have it. 2 magnificent triumphs and 1 resounding disappointment from 2024. Do let me know your thoughts. Have I hit the mark, or am I entirely off my rocker? If you've enjoyed this little jaunt through my cinematic musings, be a dear and like, subscribe and ring that proverbial bell. Until next time, keep your tea hot, your opinions sharp, and your film